Welcome to the podcast. My name is Todd Milewski here with Nicole Haase from USCHO.com once again. And Nicole, this is becoming a little bit of a pattern that you look back at last week's results and you go, huh? To some of them. I which one of those that we saw last week, the results, and we'll get into a lot of them here in the next couple of minutes. But what were the head scratchers for you in the last weekend? And why do you think maybe it is that we're having these kind of results that it's like, well, didn't expect that, couldn't have predicted that.
Yeah, I mean, we're at the point where any given weekend, I look back and I'm like, I can't explain what just happened there, which is not a wonderful feeling as, a journalist covering the sport, but is fun for the fans. What's the biggest head scratcher from last week? Maybe Cornell losing to Vermont, and maybe I didn't expect Brown to go winless this weekend. And then I think probably the third one, I did expect Ohio State to win. I did not expect Ohio State to take down Clarkson 8-0. So those were just a couple of the things that were just like, wow, what is going on? I mean, Cornell, I think over the past 2 to 3 weeks, it's been a bit of a head scratcher after how they started. But yeah, it's, I've always said I'm Team Chaos, and I love that. And I think, probably the reason or some of it is just that we continue to the base of really good hockey players is no longer spread among a small amount of teams. There's just the growth of the sport means that there are better players that are filling rosters at schools that didn't previously get top tier talents. I don't that's not a value statement on anyone. It's just that there was a smaller pool of players. You sort of had them going to programs that had historically won championships and things like that. And now you're seeing players that are breaking out and some from other countries, some that maybe just grew up in their final 2 years, right? And so they necessarily weren't huge commits at 16, but have been really impactful at 18 and 19. But yeah, I think it says really great things about the growth of girls in hockey in the country or in North America. But yeah, that's probably the most sensible answer to the question in terms of why this is happening. But it does make every week. I just think it makes me feel like I'm not very good at what I'm doing, right? Because I just am I wouldn't have predicted that. And I'm saying that multiple times a weekend. I mean, you and I are constantly texting each other results did you see this? Because it's just highly unexpected. And I mean, that's fun, right? That is so good for this sport. I think that it's great when things aren't predictable and that a lot of people were getting sick of the same teams over and over and over again. And I don't know if we're past that yet, right? I do feel like we're got a pretty predictable tournament at the end of the season, likely, or at least most of the teams that'll make the tournament. But I do think we're particularly in one and done situations. We're seeing that there's a lot more opportunity for upsets. There's a lot more opportunity for a team to maybe make a run in their conference tournament. And it's just, it's things are a lot less predictable. And that's totally good for everybody except for you and I who have to try and talk about this knowledgeably.
Yeah, I think we are seeing that there is still a top heaviness to a lot of it, whereas, we get a 17-2 game when Wisconsin plays Stonehill, or we get Ohio State running through a couple of teams. We didn't necessarily see them running through, but there is a little bit more of the middle, the next group feels like it's a lot more compressed than it was maybe 5 years ago, where there was, a couple of teams every year that you knew, okay, they're going to be in the mix. Maybe they're a Frozen Four team this year. And now it feels like that pool, the next pool, I guess, is maybe a little wider. And I think there's something to be said for that as growth, while there's also something to be said for, man, it just really feels like it's tough to unseat Wisconsin or Ohio State or sometimes Minnesota near the top of things.
Yeah, and I'd argue, I think maybe we would have said there was a slightly bigger top group, right? Maybe it was 6 to 8 teams, and we're talking back when BC was consistently in it and things like that. And so now I think that elite group is smaller, and then, it doesn't definitely winds out in that next group, as you said. And I think too, I mean, we've seen for a while that teams are sort of growing the program overall, right? Like we weren't talking about Colgate, before 2018 or so. Heck, we weren't talking about Ohio State before around that time
Right.
either. But you sort of see like a build, and it does tend to last. We're not talking just like sort of one class or one maybe 4-year rotation, but you sort of like see some of the groups, even Clarkson, it's been longer for them, but 2014, it was sort of like before that they weren't in the mix as much. And so you are seeing programs grow and sort of be able to be sort of more consistently in the mix and fighting for those spots in a way that maybe 10 years ago, 15 years ago, we weren't.
Right. Well, let's go through some of the results from last week. And I want to start in Boston, where we previewed this last week, a matchup of top 10 teams, number 4 Penn State playing at number 7 Northeastern. And right off the bat on Friday, Northeastern handed Penn State its first loss of the season after the Nittany Lions came in 16-0, 3-2 for Northeastern in the first game of that series. Lily Shannon scored a goal and an assist as Northeastern built a 3-0 lead after 2 periods, and then you're thinking it's over. Penn State's top player, Tessa Janicki, is ejected for a hit from behind, but in the third period, Penn State makes a game of it, scoring 2 goals, but can't get the third. Lisa Janssen makes 34 saves to seal the victory in that Friday game. Penn State comes back with a Saturday win, 4-1. After falling behind 1-0, the Nittany Lions score 2 in the second, 2 in the third. So Penn State is 17-1 and number 3 in the NPI. Northeastern 13-3 and number 6 in the NPI. And these feel like teams that are right near the top of that next group that we were just talking about. They behind Wisconsin and Ohio State, who will play this week to kind of just define a little bit for now who is the top of the top. You've got Penn State and you've got Northeastern. They're showing that, yes, they are part of that next group.
Right. And we probably expected that out of Penn State. But if you'd have told me that in September about Northeastern, I would have not been skeptical, but said I would like to wait and see. Like I want to see what they're showing. I think an important thing to point out about that first game is that Penn State absolutely dominated that first period.
Mm-hmm.
Northeastern kept them off the board and then scored on their only shot of the period with like 25 seconds left in the first. And Penn State did go, I mean, it did even out a little as things went on, but like the fact that Northeastern won that game, I honestly kind of had it in hand, weirdly, despite the dynamics on ice. I mean, obviously Penn State pushed in the third, but yeah, that was such a strange game. And unfortunately, the second game was played out in Gloucester, and which is cool. I'm so glad they went out in the community, but then was not streamed. And so in terms of having watched that first game, I would have loved just to see the different dynamic and how things looked for Penn State to get that win in the second one. But yeah, absolutely. I think those two have shown to be not unbeatable, but to be really difficult to beat. Obviously, Penn State, we know, literally had gone unbeaten to this point. I think it's probably good for them to get that loss out of the way. I think we are in a situation. I don't feel like we're going to see an undefeated season ever again. I don't know that I thought that ever, but particularly with the way the game has changed since the Gophers did it. And I think you would rather, do that now, sort of had that recoup. And I think it's important for teams to lose and learn from that too. So Penn State, gone to the postseason twice and not gotten the results they wanted, not really been able to show what they want to do. So I think if Penn State wants to be a different team as we head into the NCAA tournament, there things like that are what are going to put them in a different position than they've been in the past 2 years.
In the Washington, D.C. area, the D1 in D.C. event brought in 2 teams from the WCHA, St. Cloud State and Ohio State, and 2 from ECAC hockey, Colgate and Clarkson. And I guess the takeaway for me there is Ohio State, you touched on it before, but just running over Clarkson 8-0 in their first game, and then getting another shutout 5-0 over Colgate in the second game. And like you mentioned before, not surprised by the team that ended up on the winning side, but the margin there being the interesting thing. Hilda Svensson, who's putting on a pretty good campaign for National Rookie of the Year here so far with a hat trick and 5 points in that game against Clarkson. Joy Dunn also 5 points. And the big number for me there was third period shots on goal, 20-0 for Ohio State. And that tells you just how far in control they were in that game. was nothing after one, and then Ohio State broke it up with 4 in the second, and then man just poured it on.
I think
in the
9
third.
total shots for Clarkson. Like they didn't even
Yes.
reach double digits and then didn't have a shot in the third. I had read that and forgot about it. I'm glad you brought that up. Yeah, just absolute domination from the Buckeyes. And I think too, like you look at that score and you're like, oh, they dominated offensively, but like obviously, and we don't talk as much about their defense, mostly because they possess the puck so well and just kind of don't have to play it
Right.
in the same way. But I think it's important there to point out that like obviously the defense was just absolutely shut down, made it through that first period. And then the way that they can just kind of turn things around and just take a game from close to out of hand so quickly is going to be so demoralizing for opponents. Yeah, they're obviously, there's good, they're as advertised what we expected from them, looking at their incoming talent, things like that. And Hilda Svensson, so excited. I've been talking about her since the beginning of the year, like to make that hit. But obviously, I mean, she's been already playing with the senior national team in Sweden. We knew what she could deliver. Yeah, well, first of all, I mean, just based on how their seasons have gone, I didn't expect Colgate to fare better against Ohio State than Clarkson did. I maybe surprised by St. Cloud State getting the win over Colgate. I mean, it was the Sophiana Sutherland show. She had a great game, Sunderland. But yeah, that whole series is slightly head scratching, not necessarily in the end results of the numbers, but just how those games played out.
Yeah, so it was 3-2 in overtime. St. Cloud got the win over Colgate. And then Clarkson beat St. Cloud on the second day 2-0. That was one event that I was really looking forward to seeing, I guess, especially on the side of the ECAC teams, how that was going to shake out. We're still looking for the definition of who's where and who's up and who's down, right? And feels like that's changing in our minds every week in some way or another. You mentioned before, and I think we'll talk about it again in a minute. Brown losing twice this week. Well, okay, they're down again. They've been kind of showing, well, okay, maybe there's some progress. Nope, back it down. They're going to come back up. They're going to go back down. So I don't know what I'm pulling out of this for Colgate and for Clarkson. Other than it's going to, if either of them has to face Ohio State in the tournament, it's going to be very, very tough.
Yeah, I mean, I think what everybody has to take away is a valid fear of Ohio State at this point. As you mentioned, we will be seeing Wisconsin and Ohio State this weekend in Ohio State. That we'll talk about that coming up, but like, what an amazing time for that. I mean, peak scheduling, A+ we have built to that. As you said. Oh, maybe we'll figure out, but I just assume anytime we're looking for like definition of something, it'll just be a straight split and we will learn nothing standard. Not standard, we're gonna learn nothing. It just be like in the end, like, oh, that's exactly what we thought.
Yep, that's what I'm going with from now on. Yep, that's kind of what it feels like we're in for here. The Nutmeg Classic in Connecticut had a ranked matchup in the first of 2 days. Number 8 UConn beat number 9 Quinnipiac 4-3. In the Friday game, Megan Woodworth broke a 3-3 tie with just over 3.5 minutes left in that game. Tia Chan made 40 saves, and then UConn beat Yale 3-2 on Saturday for the championship of that tournament. Julia Pellerin with the game-winning goal with about 90 seconds left in that one. So a couple of late earned victories for UConn to win kind of the state championship, if you will, for Connecticut.
Yeah. Oh, come back to that. I just want to say, you were mentioning ECAC, like, trying to figure it out. Like, we would have said Quinnipiac is the one that had separated themselves, and now like that too here. And that leads me into saying, like, Hockey East, we're sorry. Like, I mean, kind of feel like we bagged on Hockey East a little to start. Now they've got, I think, 4 teams in the top 15 of the NPI, including Holy Cross, who we have not talked about at all. So, sorry, Holy Cross, right. we owe you some. But yeah, I looking at the NPI right now is a little nuts. Not at all what I expected, but also like, kudos to the Hockey East teams that are really showing it out. And I thought, obviously UConn was at home. We know they're a very good team. We know there's a lot of pride on the line there, and a lot of pressure, and they went out and delivered. And just they responded a lot. in their games, which I think is going to need to be the theme for most everybody this year. Like, you have to be able to come back in games. You have to be able to respond, and probably do it more than once. And so, yeah, I thought UConn showed really well. It's not that I thought Quinnipiac played badly. I just thought, like, as we're talking ECAC and we're looking for someone to separate themselves, like, we're still in a week where the team that I thought had separated themselves also lost. And so it's definitely an interesting, February is going to be amazing. And we still haven't even dealt with any of the players leaving much. So, for many of the teams. So yeah, it's, I feel bad for how with Hockey East, we did not, I was not familiar.
Not familiar with their game. I apologize. Right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
In Nashville, the Smashville Showcase, which was a 3-team, 3-day event. I don't know what to make of that, really. It was an odd concept, and it
Happened.
I guess turned out how everyone thought it was going to. Mercyhurst beat Stonehill 6-1 on Friday. Number 1 Wisconsin beat Mercyhurst 5-1 on Saturday, and Stonehill, which had the day off between games, just got completely run over by Wisconsin 17-2 on Sunday. A game that tied the NCAA record for most goals in the game, both by a team and by 2 teams. Harvard also won a 17-2 game over Boston College January 28th, 2003. So that one's been on the board for a long time. Wisconsin set its program record for goals in the game, obviously. They had just set it last year with 16, and now hitting 17 this year. 87 shots on goal, also a program record. It was one of those days where we're just flipping through pages of the record book to like find what's next.
Like,
and
you're ideal. I need you guys to know that this hits Todd's, like, everything he loves. Like, he could read you every record right now. He knows them all. He went and looked them all up.
I decided I had to finally cut myself off from looking them up on Sunday just to get the story in and posted on the website, because that could have gone on a lot longer.
This is his catnip,
but also 9. Yes, thank you very much. 9 goals in the second period for the Badgers. Also, that one did set an NCAA record, I believe, because it was 8 was the record. So yeah, a lot of I don't know that it's really worth spending a whole lot more time on that one, because it was lopsided. It was expected to be lopsided, and we got it, I guess.
The biggest question was, Stonehill changed goalies after, I think, the 12th goal, which I just was
Something like that,
maybe get her out of there sooner. I don't know. It was an odd time to make that choice. I think on the other side, Wisconsin's Raya Stewart got the start. Presumably, she's going to spend time in net if Ava McNaughton is with Team USA. I have often said I thought she should be in net a little more to start this season. So that was a good thing. I don't know that there's a lot to say. We tried to spin it nicely last weekend, but I don't know what that accomplished. It's not very nice to Stonehill. Like, Wisconsin's in a no-win situation there for them. I mean, as an opponent, you don't want the team against you to just stop trying. Like, that's more insulting.
Right.
Yeah, the choices that were made here did not set either Mercyhurst or Stonehill up to end up in a good situation. And, that's not any of the 3 teams' fault. So, I hope that we make some better decisions as organizers in the future. I think too, particularly, like, looking at how good things were in DC, where we had these 4 ranked teams, and then this was the other option. Just really starkly stood out as, like, I'm not sure what this does for the sport or any of the teams. So I hope that the girls' tournament in Nashville enjoyed it and got to see lots of great stuff. I hope that bit was accomplished, but I hope that we don't subject teams to this again, because I don't like it. I don't like it. I feel really bad for Stonehill. It's bad.
Yeah, it is. Moving on into some other non-conference games last week. You touched on this briefly. Vermont beating number 5 Cornell 4-3 on Friday. Lauren O'Hara scored the goal late in the second period that put the Catamounts ahead for good. Ellie Simmons then stopped all 13 Cornell shots in the third period. And at that point, after that loss, Cornell was 2-3-1 in its last 6 games after a 7-0 start. And we're starting to wonder, well, okay, which Cornell team is the real one here? The Big Red did come back with a 5-1 win on Saturday to show, okay, maybe that's the direction they can go, but it's also they can't really have these one up, one down kind of weekends if they're going to want to stay near the top of the rankings, the NPI, and eventually when you get into it, the ECAC.
Yeah, it was, I mean, not only is it surprising, but like they almost looked as surprised as the rest, like the team just really looked a little shell-shocked, like they didn't know what to do, which is a little surprising. Like, A, it wasn't their first loss, and B, I like there's experience there. This is, I mean, if nothing else, it's a team that lost, you know, in the Frozen Four last year. Like, have experience being in sort of situations where things are not going your way, not doing what you want to do, and like they responded really great in the semifinal last year. But yeah, I just kind of felt like they looked a little lost, as though they weren't a top 5 team that is capable of coming back down from down multiple to like have one of the best goalies. It just was a really interesting and weird. I assume there will be lots of lessons learned for them and lots of time to sort of look at this and talk about it, not from a like, ugh, what did you do wrong, but from understanding mentally like what got them to the point where they just looked like they weren't sure how to handle that situation, you know? In this
Right.
is one of those where I think it's important to remember they're student athletes, right? And you're talking somewhere between 18 and 22 years old, because I felt like I haven't watched a game in a while where I felt like I am watching children going through it a little bit, you know? So
Right.
I think that was every once in a while, I think with the PW too, and knowing some of the players that are going there and some of the players playing in with various Olympic teams, it's a good reminder again that they're student athletes and still learning and growing and developing frontal,
Right.
you know, developing brains. Because that watching that game, it's a little what I felt. Yeah.
Yep. Continuing on with the theme of Hockey East having a pretty good weekend against ECAC teams, you had Providence beating Brown, number 11 ranked Brown, 3-2 on overtime on Saturday for the Mayor's Cup there in Providence. Audrey Knapp with her second goal of the game to win it in overtime. And then New Hampshire beat Brown 4-1 on Sunday. Danica Botterill broke a 1-1 tie early in the third period, and the Wildcats added a couple of empty net goals. Brown now, having lost 3 of its last 4 games, to fall to 8-5-1 overall. And I wonder if this has kind of pulled Hockey East a little bit closer to ECAC in terms of the non-conference records directly between the two. ECAC still has the better record in non-conference play overall and in direct comparison with Hockey East, but seeing that gap shrink a little bit has, made it possible for more Hockey East teams to be in those, like you mentioned, the top 15 of the NPI at this point in the season. Now, again, we're still very early. We're in the first half of the season, so the NPI is a little finicky there, but you're starting to see it become a little bit more reliable in terms of giving a look at who could be a factor in the second half of the season.
Yeah, I mean, all those 2 games did for me is reinforce the feeling that at any given time, everybody's pretty beatable right now. And there is nobody should be comfortable, particularly in those 2 leagues. But it felt like Brown had put together this string of really great outings, and so not that I thought they were never going to lose or anything like that, but those were surprising to me in that didn't feel like the same Brown team I had seen sort of come from behind and do some of the things they've done for the past few weeks. And so yeah, I think it's just it portends what we're going to see as the season keeps going in January and February, in that we're only going to see more and more really close margins. We're in conference, all those points and half points, because we're talking ECAC, will matter. And then I just think, yeah, it really just reinforces that I think we're going to see a lot more upsets or maybe surprising. I don't know if they're upsets but for anybody at this point anymore. It feels like the not right word to use, but yeah, the fact that we've moved to more one and done playoff formats definitely feels like we're gonna be seeing some chaos upcoming.
Very much so. You can also see the rest of the scores from last weekend, the schedules for this week coming up at USCHO.com. So make sure to check those out. We are going to take a quick break. When we come back, we are going to look ahead to the number 1 versus number 2 matchup in Columbus this coming week. And we're going to look back at Nicole's appearance on television last week. So stay with us on the podcast. Welcome back to the podcast. Todd and Nicole with you for the second segment here, which will start with a look at games that the last 11 times that Wisconsin and Ohio State have played, going back a couple of seasons, it has been number 1 versus number 2, which tells you how in control of those top 2 spots in the rankings these two teams have been. It'll be Badgers and Buckeyes, rematch of the last 3 NCAA championship games on Friday and Saturday in Columbus, their first 2 meetings of the season. And it's an important 2 meetings of the season, Nicole, because these are the only ones where, at least in the regular season, nothing's guaranteed in the postseason, but in the regular season, both of these teams are going to have their full teams, because when they play in February, you're going to have players gone for the Olympics. So you think about it that way, this is a real chance for both of these teams to put a stamp on control of the WCHA. Ohio State goes in with a 1-point lead, but that's, pretty negligible when it comes to teams having still to play 4 games against each other.
Like what what's the number of points either team gets is far less important than sort of the vibes that come out of this weekend, in terms of like who feels like the team that is most likely to be in charge heading into the postseason. I just think like this is a really important gut check, probably most likely for Wisconsin, in terms of just like knowing where you stand, I think, they're obviously both very talented teams. They're both going to play, their absolute best. But, I think the questions are, as we mentioned a little bit, is we don't see a ton of defense from Ohio State. That's not to say that I don't think they have it. It's hard to know how they'll handle sort of you're talking 2 teams that are pretty relentless against each other, right? Like it's wave after wave of talent. And so there's not really any time to take off take your foot off the gas. There's not any time to really catch your breath. And so in terms of an Ohio State defense that isn't super tested week after week, how do they handle, being tested by literal, Olympic world-class talent? And on the other side of the reason I think Wisconsin, this is probably more important for them, is that they've had some bobbles, right? Like we've just seen some real like mental breakdowns, some real maybe sort of like checkout laziness at times, like not clearing the puck well. We saw it against St. Cloud State. We've seen it. We saw it against Minnesota. All those sort of little things that honestly they've done against other teams, but those teams haven't been able to make them pay for it. And Ohio State absolutely will exploit every one of those things. You better believe they're going to be forechecking and looking for all of the bobbles and all of the things that Wisconsin's been doing wrong at times this season. Like there's just going to be no room for error for them. And if they can't play to the best of their ability to play the game and that we've seen them capable of, or maybe what that's going to tell us is that they're not capable of. Maybe we're just saying this is the team we saw last season and we assume because they returned most of the roster that they're going to do it again this season. But yeah, I think Wisconsin's got a lot of questions to answer. They, have depth and they have talent and they've won games that maybe they shouldn't have based on some of the lapses that they've had. And so to me, like, that's what I mean by the vibe check. Like, does Wisconsin step up and play how we think that they can, how they, like, their roster says that they should be capable of? Can they, go toe to toe with Ohio State? And if they don't, then I think there's probably conversations to be had about, like, are they in that conversation? Like, is it them and Ohio State and maybe, a couple other teams at the top, or is it just Ohio State?
Right. Wisconsin has been number 1 in the USCHO.com poll since, last September, I think. Very, very early, the second week of the 24-25 season. Won the national championship by beating Ohio State last season. Ohio State number 1 in the NPI right now, though Wisconsin second, and like you mentioned, Ohio State a point up in the WCHA standings. Badgers have the first ranked offense in the country. Ohio State is second. These are all the things that have been happening every year, where these two teams are right there neck and neck with each other in a lot of statistical categories. Caroline Harvey leads the country with 37 points as a defender for Wisconsin, which is, I mean, something we need to talk about at some point. Is it going to be feasible for someone like KK Harvey to win a PodKaz with a Olympic absence? So her stats are going to suffer. Hilda Svensson for Ohio State, leading freshman with 31 points. It's going to be, all these things are going to factor in. We've touched on this like real early in the season on what that's going to mean. And I think we'll get to that when it gets closer to that time. But these are obviously teams that have players that are on a level that most teams in college hockey don't have. Women's college hockey do not have. So when you put them together, the level of play is, and we've seen it in March in the last few seasons, the level of play is just ridiculous, where we're spoiled having had the chance to see those games the last few seasons, and just the details of them, of how crisp they can be and how much they do pay attention, especially in those games that have been so close, to how important it is to get the puck deep and how important it is to go fight for it. Those little things do show up in these kind of games, where in a lot of games, it's nice if it works, but it's not going to hurt you if it doesn't. These are the games that definitely does matter.
Yeah, absolutely. I think too, these are the type of games where their game plan to some extent goes out the window. Like, it's not necessarily going to be pretty hockey. They're both not going to get to play the game they, in a perfect world, would want to play. And it's how they handle what they do with a whole lot less time and space. When all of the things that have worked for them and have gone well are out the window, like, who's the team that's still playing poised, who's still, like you said, doing those little things, remembering their details, playing the kind of hockey that their coach wants them to be playing, right? Like, which is really hard to do when you got Joy Dunn sprinting down the ice at you to forecheck, like, you have to make the right decision quickly in that time frame. And it's the same the other end. Like, if KK's forechecking on you, like, what are you doing? If she's got the puck, she's leading the country with just 9 goals with 28 assists. Like, the thing that Caroline has leveled up this year, KK has leveled up this year, is her sort of her vision and her playmaking, her ability to not just move the puck, but move the puck to her teammates, like, with, I don't know, like, decisively. Like, she will take a step and open up a lane or pull a defender and then perfectly place the puck in a way that I think is more detailed and more nuanced than maybe she had done in previous seasons. But all of that little stuff, like, if you are someone that really loves the game, or someone that's looking to learn the game, watch this game and watch the details, because this is all literal world-class talent on both of those two teams. They are playing overall at a level similar to, if not better than some of the WHL stuff you're seeing. Like, this is top tier talent, doing all of those tiny small things to make a difference in a game. And that's what makes it fun. And also because it is chaotic. It's not going out there and setting up your plays and doing what you always want to do. It's reacting, and using instincts, right? Because there isn't time to actually stop and make a decision. So how well does their chemistry work? How well are they, able to find each other? All that sort of stuff. But that's what's going to make these games great to watch. And it's going to happen at a speed that is, like, several steps higher than we've seen from most other games this season.
Yeah, and the games at Ohio State at the OSU ice rink always seem to happen faster, just because it feels like everyone's on top of each other more there. I don't know what the exact dimensions of that rink
I don't
are.
think it's that different. Yeah.
People on the Wisconsin side have said for years that's not 200 by 85. And I think there's some of that just feels like, because the building, everyone is so close to you, the roof is low, the sides are close to you, that it feels like it's tighter than when you're in a different, or a bigger kind of arena. But it does feel like, and part of it is a function of how Ohio State plays teams, they get on you fast when you have the puck. So that makes it feel like the ice is smaller too, I would imagine.
Yeah, that is the first ice arena that I had ever walked into where there's still like ice outside the dasher boards. Like as you're walking around, the ice is still. And like literally there you climb up a ladder into the press box and you are absolutely gonna get a puck by you because like as you said, it's a really low roof. And you're sort of right on top of everything. It is a fascinating barn. I know that Ohio State has grown to love it and their fans love it. I do think that's an affectionate choice and that I both understand it and think that team deserves so much better than that rink. But yeah, it's going to be loud in there. They will, put as many people as they can there, particularly along behind the goalie there with folks pounding on the boards. It's I think even if we get like, boring split here where it's like 3-2 one way and 3-2 the other, I do think there's still a lot of things that we'll see and learn from these games that will tell us a lot about how things will look heading into the postseason. And I think let's not forget that like Ohio State has had this circled. I mean, they would have anyway, but the way that the national championship went down, like they were, it was 18 seconds away from winning the title.
Yeah, 18-9, right, being the number.
And like, I mean, I've heard someone say it. I don't know if it's a joke or not, but I fully believe they have a sign somewhere in their locker room that says 18-9 because that's how that team operates. Like they get a lot of energy and they create an underdog mentality, which at this point nobody believes of them because you've played in however many national championship games, but it works for them to feel like they are sort of fighting against expectations, that they're being disrespected. They probably don't love that they're number one in MPI, but people aren't voting them number one in the polls. And they're going to use all of that. And they have a point to prove. And that's when Ohio State is the most dangerous. Like that really works for them and their style and Muzz's style of coaching and sort of who they are as their ethos. They're going to be out for, I mean, even more so than any other 1-2 or any other Wisconsin Ohio State game. Like this weekend is for them is about proving a point and about that pride.
Will be a lot for us to talk about after that one. So make sure you join us next week for more on how that finished up. Okay, let's take a spin around the rest of the country coming up this week. Also in the WCHA, number 13, St. Cloud State at number 12, Minnesota State. The Mavericks have really taken a few steps here in the last few weeks. And it'll be interesting to kind of put the Mavericks and the Huskies together to figure out who's going to make a run here at cracking the top 4 in the WCHA. Not going to be very easy because that's a pretty good group that's up there. But let's see if either one of these teams can get 6 points out of this weekend to make a difference there.
Well, PodKaz favorite Mercury Bischoff had another great weekend, scored a really pretty penalty shot, but that she's helped sort of that team believe what they're capable of, and I think that's important. I also think this will just be an interesting meeting of two really different styles of hockey. That sort of more European flair that St. Cloud State plays, and just their approach is different. And so it'll be interesting to see how they feel each other out and how they sort of prepare for playing against that different style without losing their own identity.
In ECAC, there's what I feel like is an important one for direction as you get closer to the end of the first semester. Teams are going to take a break for a couple weeks. Number 9 Quinnipiac and number 8 Cornell on Friday. Both of these teams kind of need a not necessarily a turnaround, but just a readjustment in terms of where they're pointed before they get into that break period. I think Cornell being at home, that helps them. But we've seen that hasn't been perfect for them there either.
Yeah, I think it's an important, if people don't know, this is more or less our last weekend of games. There's a handful of games next weekend. There'll be some stuff, around the holidays, but more or less this is our last regular week of slate of games until after the new year. And so, yeah, I think, like you said, I don't think it's the be all end all, but I think for both those teams, it would be really important to set the tone heading into that break, right? Like you want to move into that holiday break and have some of that downtime on a positive note, on things you can build on, and not sit and stew on what could have been. And I think if Cornell drops some more points this weekend, that will be a lot less comfortable break for them.
And then Quinnipiac on Saturday plays at number 14 Colgate. Colgate hosts number 11 Princeton on Friday. And then, of course, because of the travel partners, Princeton at Cornell on Saturday. Those are a lot of the teams that are going to be, I'm just pulling up the ECAC standings. It's, 18 points for Cornell at the top, and you're midway through the pack and it's 13 points. And so with St. Lawrence down in 6th. So a lot of teams are going to have a big say in things in the race for the championship in the second half. And these kind of games here are the ones where you can get a little bit of an edge over some of the teams you're going to be in that race with. And so they may be, okay, you're just getting to the end of the first semester here, but these are going to be important games for the finish.
Yeah, we're talking about, some of the ranked teams, but like it's entirely possible that Princeton sweeps their weekend. Like they're a team that has gone out and got some big wins, and just sort of hasn't really broken through to stay in the rankings. So yeah, none of those are easy wins for any of those 4 teams. So should be fascinating hockey. But yeah, I think every one of them is looking to make a statement and really like put themselves in a position to really jump off into the second half. So I'd like to thank the schedulers for a lot of fun this week.
Absolutely. And then in Hockey East, one that stood out to me, number 6 Northeastern hosting Boston College on Saturday. It's the last game at Matthews Arena for the Huskies women's hockey team. And it's interesting to have your senior day in December, but that's what they're doing because the rest of their games, they're not going to have a true home for a couple of years now. And so this is, as that kind of goes on into the second half of the season, that is an important thing to watch with Northeastern. They've been off to a good start. They are 9-1 at home, but they're not going to have the feeling of home anymore.
That home doesn't exist anymore. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm going to be kind of trying to keep an eye on that and see if that has any factor in how some of these games are going to go, and I guess how it shakes out for the Huskies in the second half of the season.
Absolutely, and that will be a very big and emotional game for them this week. And BC will be looking to take advantage of that for sure. But that's a little piece of hockey history, and particularly women's hockey history in Boston. So if you get a chance to tune in, you should, just to get sort of that one more last look at Matthews. But that's a really interesting point in terms of they love playing there. They love their fan base. They much like I talked about Ohio State, they sort of embraced their old barn. And so I do think, like there isn't a home advantage when you don't have that home anymore.
All right. So they're going to be playing in a lot of different venues. I mean, Boston is an area that is lucky to have
options,
quite a few college hockey capable venues. And so they'll be playing at a few of them as their new arena is being built on the same site over the next couple of years. If you're in Boston and have never been to Matthews Arena, take that opportunity to go check out Saturday's game. It's I've been there, for 2 days. I was there a couple of years ago, and it's an interesting old barn, and I'm glad I was there to see it for at least that brief period of time, because wow, that's it took me back to some old days of old rinks that I was at when I was a kid, and man, that's there's just so much history in there, and they don't design buildings like that anymore for good reason in a lot of ways, but it does have its charm, and definitely.
Yes, it's all said with love,
cool
but also it's an old place. Yeah.
Right. I did find the worst possible seat there, where you're like literally staring at a pole for, the entire game. But hopefully they don't sell that one. But yeah, so that is cool. So again, check out the schedule page on USCHO.com for all of the games this week. Nicole, before we go, I am so glad that the question about read by JJ Watt about Reggie White as a Wisconsinite, you got that one correct on Jeopardy last Thursday. So first off, congratulations
let me come
on
home.
Yeah, there would have been some discussions there, but congratulations on just going through that, and it looks like it was a super cool just kind of moment in time. I wonder if you want to, now that you can tell us everything about what happened instead of just the parts that are not about the broadcast, but what are you going to remember about that day of kind of taking that all in?
Honestly, that question is what stuck with me, but can I admit that I didn't remember that JJ Watt read it? I just remembered I got the Reggie White question. So I faced Harrison, who's a super champion at this point. He's like top 12 all-time Jeopardy winner. And I watched him beat 6 other people before I had to go on and also like warm up his buzzer finger, which is the hardest part to begin with. And so at some point you're a little like, I can't believe I had all this buildup, and this is like, to a little bit afterwards, I was like, that's it? Like, that's what I just built myself up for, to be like bulldozed by this super champ. But I will say the past like week or so of everybody being so kind and nice and excited about it has like totally, not that I got over that pretty quick, but like has really changed my sort of lasting impression of doing this. I think it wasn't a lifelong goal because it wasn't something I had ever thought about doing. Like, it just didn't really occur to me. And I did this a little bit on a whim, and it all went really well for me. And I'm sure there are people that absolutely hate me for that. But it was all such a whirlwind that like, it was a little like, spinning a bunch and then just stopping and like trying to find your bearings coming out of like getting my butt beat by Harrison. And so yeah, there's just a little like trying to find my equilibrium. But honestly, it was hard to beat him on the buzzer. The buzzer's hard anyway, and then he was, in his 4th game of the day, and you're in your sweet spot in his 13th or 14th game overall. And so just getting in on some stuff was really nice. Getting the only sports category that happened the week of my tapings, because they tape 5 a day. So I got the NFL category, and that was the only sports category. And then there was one that was literally on a tee for me, and I beat him. I beat Harrison, which was awesome. There was also one about Tottenham Hotspur. Actually, somebody commented that I was laughing about it being Tottenham. They're like, oh, she must be an Arsenal fan. And I was like, actually, I was laughing because Harrison lives in England. And so I was just really excited to beat him to the buzzer on something that very much was in his wheelhouse. So yeah, it's more the little stuff that I remember from that. The last thing I think has just been how sort of joyful and happy, like everybody's been so nice in a way that like is both uncomfortable and like truly delightful and like makes me happy. But it's just been beyond, like, you couldn't have dreamed it. Like, even if this was a lifelong dream, I still think it would have exceeded it. It just was a really cool experience. And I'm thrilled that I got to do it. And I'm thrilled that I didn't make an ass of myself on public in front of everybody. I didn't get any questions wrong. And my 2 things, I got the Final Jeopardy wrong, but also I couldn't lose 2nd place. And so when it didn't come to me, I also didn't try very hard to get it. I was like, was a question that involves Avengers. I won't spoil it just in case anybody hasn't watched yet, but I could not think of the 3rd Avengers movie. Well, I'm like, well, it's not Infinity War and it's not Age of Ultron. And I could not come up with Endgame. Like, my head just would not go there. And I just was like, well, so I just took a time to like look around the studio and really soak it all in, because I couldn't lose 2nd place. And a thing that I haven't talked about is they literally give you a Sharpie and a piece of paper to do the math for the final thing. And neither of the other 2 guys in my episode did that. Like, they didn't care. But I wanted to make sure I stayed with $1 more than double the guy in 3rd. And I'm a journalist, guys. We've talked about, I don't math. I do not. So like, everybody's waiting for me as I'm like quite literally hand calculating and being like, don't screw this up. Don't screw this. So that was a funny moment. But yeah, yeah, the whole thing is still entirely surreal. I was really excited to not have to sit and watch it in front of my entire extended family or my husband's extended family. But then on Thursday or Friday, we went to a bar and some friends came and I ended up being projected up on the wall, which is not something I want to repeat. But everybody was just really nice. Like total strangers came over to watch and things like that. So it's been overwhelming. Like there were times in September when I was like, what is happening? It's like the hockey season was, I was like, I'm not meeting deadlines and I'm staying up till 1 a.m. studying and all that sort of stuff. But it was entirely worth it. It's been a blast. And I think under the circumstances, I was like, would I have liked to not face Harrison? Like it felt like there's no way I'm winning. But I also like at the midpoint of the game was close to him. We got a really hard board in the second round, and that's just how it went. I mean, we all stood there. Oh, also, I what I learned is that I make a ton of faces, which I guess I kind of know watching this, but if you're watching this, you will notice that I close my eyes or look away quite a bit. But yeah, I am one giant reaction meme during that taping. I'm sitting at Thanksgiving and the episode showed some places and people are sending me like pictures of their TV with me making faces while I'm eating Thanksgiving dinner. So, what are you going to do?
Right. Well, and you got a shout out for women's hockey out there during your interview.
Nice.
So that was cool. So that was nice. Awesome. Well, yeah, glad that you had that opportunity. And if you didn't get a chance to see it yet, it is on Peacock still for a couple more days as of our recording here early in the week. And so you can check it out there. But yeah, pretty cool opportunity.
Yeah, thank you.
So how did you, for last thing I want to ask about that, if people are interested in doing that, in getting on Jeopardy, how did you do it, and what was the process of like you did it on some website, correct, that you applied for it?
Jeopardy.com has an online test. You are not signing up to take the test. When you go in, the test will just start. So be prepared for that. I didn't know that. That probably helped me because I did not freak out at like the clock started and I was like, okay, I'm just going to start answering questions. And I think too, it's important, like while I do think, Jeopardy contestants are smart and do have a wide variety of knowledge, like also it's just luck of the draw and what the questions are. Right. Like we had a whole category in trees and we all just stood there, but there are probably people that are like, duh, why didn't you know that? And I think that like you have to, whatever the 25 question first test is, like you just have to be able to hit some of that. So I did that. I got invited back to take a second test, which is 50 questions. It's still just typing on your computer, but that one's on Zoom so they can make sure you're not cheating. And then the third round was like a game on Zoom. Like I competed against 3 other people and I had a little pen for my clicker and had to do an interview with the producers. So yeah, it's the process for me, I think I started right at the end of June and I was booked by mid-September and I taped on October 21st and then it aired on Thanksgiving. So super quick turnaround. But if you pass all those, you get put in the contestant pool for 2 years. So you could be pulled at any point. And if you're not pulled at the end of that 2 years, then you can start the whole process over again.
All right.
That's the shortened version. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm sure there are some people out there that are rushing to that website, Jeopardy.com, and going to take care of it right now. All right. Well, that's going to wrap it up for this week. We hope you enjoy this week's games. You can check out, as I mentioned, all the schedules and live scores on USCHO.com. And you can watch a lot of those games on streaming services. That Northeastern BC game is on Nessun Saturday afternoon. So you can check that out if you have Nessun, or if you have ESPN Plus, it'll be on that as well. So for Nicole, I'm Todd. Thanks for watching or listening to the PodKaz.